We are in IronCAD. So in our file, we are actually in a millimeter unit. So we're going to use an ISO standard to build our pipe run. And we're basically going to start at our flange down here, and we're going to create a pipe run up to our top pipe of our tank. So when you enable the piping, you'll see a new ribbon bar that you can add to your current ribbon bar set. In our case, we already have it added here. And we're going to actually start with the create pipe function, which will open up our toolbox browser that we mentioned earlier that allows you to actually create any components. So this is our piping route that is standard and specific to the pipe runs and have specific meanings and specific nodes to do this. But you can also create and modify these just by going in and configuring these to add your own toolbox repository that you can add your own parametric parts, for example. If you wanted to add components into there that will have a similar behavior when you drag and drop out to allow you to select variables, this is one way to do that with the toolbox. But the piping is what we're talking today, so let me go ahead and show you a little bit about that. So as I mentioned, the pre-release already has a sample set of data, which includes ANSI, ISO, and some GB files. So you can see the sets here, and mainly these consist of pipe crosses. There's elbows, flanges, reducers, tees, and a pipe tube, for example, for a simple pipe inside of here. So that's kind of the standard concept for the ANSI and the ISO side. And this is currently built off of welded components. So most of the ones that you'll see here are standards for welded pipe. So in our case, we are going to work with the ISO side, and we're going to start with that flange. So we're just going to select onto our flange. We have two here that are available to us, and let's kind of zoom in here. What we're going to do is drop right onto the location with our weld neck flange, and we're going to drop it right on that center point inside of there, and now you'll be presented with a browser that allows you to select the various standards. In our case, we have DN standards that we can set in here. We can start with it, maybe we'll go up to 65 and see how big that is, which is a pretty good mix there, but we can see that the pipe, inner pipe, is a little too large for that, even if we're at the lowest pressure rating size here. So let's go ahead and change that down a little bit, and maybe we can just up that up a little bit if we need to get the right pressure. So that's a better size for our pipe. Inside of there, let's change our pressure to maybe 6 here to see if that will update. Maybe we'll go to 10, see if that's a better size. That's a better fit for that, and it also lines up with our holes. So we'll use that one as our flange that we're going to use inside of there. So that's our starting point inside of there. And I'm just kind of sorry about this. I'm kind of moving this around here so we can see it a little bit better inside of there. So now we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And this will take us into our pipe settings. So in our case, we have a pipe that's going to be set for that 50 size DN that we selected for our flange, and then we have series inside of here. So this is basically your thickness on your pipe, so you can set different thicknesses for your pipe to select that. If you have other tubes besides our basic tubes, like if you had a threaded one, you can choose different tube types here. This will be fixed, that it'll be a single path here, but right now it's a double. You just have to pull this out to see that full path. That's where it's related to. And then you can add certain things like your bends and your elbows. So if you want to use a bend that just creates a pipe using regular bend, like a sweep bend, if you will, you can use that. Or if you have elbows, you can select that, and you can also choose that. By default, it'll go to the 90 for the particular standard that you started with, which is in our case ISO. So it's going to use the 90s for the ISO, which we'll use that as our standard. So we'll go ahead and hit OK to apply that. And now it'll actually start us into our what we call the 3D curve mode. In this case, it's really just talking about line geometry. And we already have a starting point here for our curve, which we're going to use that as our starting point, and we're going to actually use another line up here. So we're just going to zoom in here, go to our line command on our ribbon bar, and we're going to pick that starting point as well. And you can see this is similar to our 3D curve, which if you see the arrows there, it's got a X and Y. You can hit tab to change your arrow directions if you're trying to go different directions. In our case, we just want to come out of that pipe a little bit, and we can change it not orthogonal or orthogonal if you like, so that it only goes in certain directions in our case. In our case, we want it to come straight off this pipe, so we're going to pull this out a little ways, and we can hit escape because we just only want a single line. And when we select this, we can also type in what the value is. So let's maybe we'll say that's 250 for our length, hit enter, that will adjust that line. So that gives us our lines for our start and our end, and now we can do the auto route. On the ribbon bar, you'll see this command, auto route, and we're just going to essentially pick our start point and our end point, and it's going to give you a path for that. So this gives you a path based on using a Y, Z, X path, but you can change these to various other ones. So if you want to change this to try a different direction, that'll remove that section and change another path. That seems like a better path for what I want to do, and I can just go ahead and hit OK. That's what we want to run inside of there. And what it's going to do is going to swap out those bends instead of using regular bends and put our elbows on there, which are the yellow colored, and then the pipe runs. And you'll see in our tree it actually creates this nice pipe run inside of here, which gives you the route information, the components that are being used inside of there. So you can see we've got 3 elbows and the weld neck flange, and then our route parts, which is just basically the pipes. This is all used when you create your drawing. That's going to be your bill of material information for that components inside of there. So that's a simple way to use this tool to build an auto route inside of there. If you want to add other components in this, you have to be in the route edit mode. So to do that, for example, if we want to make a T on this guy, we can select on this part, and we can right click and say edit pipe route, or we can do that on the ribbon bar as well. Either way, you can edit that. Okay, now that we're in the pipe route edit, we can go back to our catalog browser and select other things. For example, we can select a T, and we can simply drag and drop that onto the curve. Once we drag and drop that on there, it'll tell us that we're using a specific standard, which we've already used on our pipe, and it also gives us our series that we're using. And we'll go ahead and hit OK. And when we hit OK, that'll orient the curve, the T, to our line correctly and change it to a yellow color because it's a new component. We can select our line if we want to orient this guy or pull that line or change its length. We can do either one. In our case, we want to orient that, so we're going to turn on our tri-ball. And we can use the tri-ball to align to this existing pipe. Inside of here, we want to rotate that, so we want to lock that axis here and make this perpendicular to our top face or floor, whichever one we wanted to use in this case. Now that we have that, we can hit escape out of there, and if you hit in the background or hit OK, that will exit that command. So that will just create your component inside of there, but if you wanted to edit again, you can always right click and go back to the route edit mode. In this case, maybe we want to change this line to be a little bit longer. Maybe we'll change it to 300 inside of there. We can do that, and that will adjust our pipe. Now, again, you can use this auto route at any time. For example, if we want to change, while we're in the edit mode, we want to add another component down here, we can do the same thing. We can zoom in down here, go back to our flanges, drag and drop a flange onto this component. I don't have a center point, so I can just hold the shift key down and select that center point. It'll connect it. And we'll just use the same flange for now in our case. And go ahead and hit, this was a 10, I believe. Here we go. We'll go ahead and set that, hit OK. And we'll just use that default pipe there. And now we can do the auto route again. We can just select our point and our point, and it'll do that pipe route run. In this case, that might not be the desired direction because it's kind of going into my floor there. I can see that. Yeah, so let's go ahead and change that to a different path inside of there. So it'll redo that to the Y path. That looks like a better route for us, and we'll go ahead and hit OK. Okay, so that's an example of how this can be used inside of here, and this will update again, creating all the components that you've used in that run. So let me zoom in a little bit here so we can see this a bit better. Inside of there, so you can see all the components are created for you. They're colored in there so you can tell them that it's part of this pipe route. Again, this is a specific component that we create, so you can actually add this to other assemblies. If you want to drag and drop it into an assembly or assemble it and add other components, you can do so as well inside of there, and you can continue to work like you do with IronCAD's components and our assemblies inside of there. Now, other components can be added to this. Again, reducers can be added, crosses, elbows. You can even use some sort of custom components for like an end cap and like a stub end to add to an end of a pipe. You can do that very easily by just drag and dropping that on there. Some things that may not update in the current version, when you change the link, they may not update with that, but we will fix that for the official release. But that gives you a quick overview of the pipe run capabilities. And again, this can be created into the drawing. The bill of material will be created for